Hello and welcome to our Midweek podcast. My name is Jerry Hendricks, and guess who I'm here with today?
Kelsey Smith.
I am here with Kelsey, who's behind the camera for us, but it's my good friend Teak Hamilton. Teak, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
I've been trying to start with a question each week for the last few weeks, so here's the question for today. Had you rather run a series of short sprints or a 2 mile?
2 mile.
Okay, so he's in for the distance. As I was thinking about the fall semester, I didn't know whether it was a series of sprints or just like a long run.
It used to be a series of sprints for us.
Yeah.
I mean, because we had so many big events. I mean, you've got Fall Festival, Thanksgiving, Advent. We had a Sawyer Pole and then Fields of Faith. So you have 5 things in the shortest semester you have. And so what? Sprint and then an event. Sprint, then event. But we fixed some of that last year, so it's a lot better.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have made it known that the fall is a fun time of the year in the life of the church, particularly I think in the children's ministry and student ministry area. But you get choirs started back and rehearsals and things like that for our band. So this is a fun time of year.
Yeah.
And we're past Labor Day weekend. We do get to operate on a short week this week.
Yes, we do. For it being our first Wednesday night back with kids, we have a short week.
In meeting yesterday, we were not positive that was going to be a good thing. It sounded really good last week.
Yes.
Long weekend, short work week, back to back like that. But
I did get to use some of the time on Labor Day to get a couple of youth to come up and help me work on the 3rd floor.
That was cool.
So that helped.
Yeah. And speaking of cool, you have air conditioning up there.
That helped a lot.
Okay. We're back in business on the 3rd floor, and we're excited about our ministry starting off tonight. Children's ministry, Kid X is what we call that. And then we have middle school youth with high school leadership on the youth area. So,
do you know what Kid X means?
I didn't know. No. Wait, how long have I been here? Nearly 5 years.
Yeah, and it started about 10 years ago.
I never thought to ask on this one.
We called it originally Extreme Kids, but then all of a sudden it became Kid X. So I don't know why. So now it's Kids Extreme or something like that. I don't know. We don't do extreme sports, but we do have an extreme lot of fun.
Well, you're pretty extreme, Teak. So, hey, this Sunday we have one of our good friends coming in. I'm going to be out of town on Sunday.
Yep.
I only miss a few Sundays a year, but I'm usually at a very important sporting events.
Right.
And this will be one of those where I'll be out of town.
What sporting event?
Well, it's a top 10 matchup for college football.
Okay.
LSU Tigers are coming to Austin to play the Texas Longhorns. So,
there you go.
James and I will be headed down there and enjoy that game. Game day is going to be there, so Texas hasn't been good in a few years. It's been a beat down, but we meet up with friends, enjoy some good food, and maybe a good football game.
All right, good.
But in my absence, we've asked a good friend of ours, and I say ours because we both met Casey through camp.
Right.
And Casey's been with us for a number of years, as well as First Baptist Sweetwater. Casey has an important role at our camp. He's sort of the MC for our celebration time. He's known for 2 words, next.
Level.
That's right. And so we're excited about him being here Sunday to continue our conversation series on All In. Casey is a youth minister at First Baptist Church in Tyler, Texas. And so we're real excited that he's worked it in his schedule because he's coming a long ways. He's not doing this for the money. He's doing it because he likes us.
Yes. I really wish you recorded camps. We could have made a great highlight reel to put at the beginning or end of service.
This is true.
From when we first met him.
Because
I still tell stories about that.
Listen, Casey is a character that you don't want to miss.
He is all in.
Fun, and he is. He speaks regularly at his church. He's spoke at a couple of youth camps I'm familiar with. So I know he's going to do a good job, and I will be tuning in on YouTube. So anyways, we're glad that he's going to be here. He's going to be continuing this conversation series from the Old Testament, and specifically the story of Abraham and Isaac. And to give some of the backstory to that, God gave a promise to Abraham that while Sarah had not had children well up into age, that they were going to have children, and that he would be the father of nations. And so along with that promise, there were some difficulties and some challenges along the way. So it's hard to get into all those things that lead up to the specific story that he's going to share on Sunday, but I thought we'd get into a little bit of that.
Cool.
Your favorite part of that story, of the Abraham story?
Of the Abraham story, favorite part? Maybe the laughter.
Explain.
Sarah,
After the long pause.
Sarah not trusting that they're going to have it, which makes sense because they weren't going to have, they were, 80s, 90s by then, and having a kid that late. Like, I'd be scared to have a kid in my 40s now, and I'm not even there yet. I'm almost there, but I'm not there yet. And that there's that lack of faith, but just because she had that lack of faith, you know that there might have been that little gleam of doubt in Abraham's mind also.
Right.
That I'm old, how's this going to happen? Or I'm going to be 110 when it's a teenager.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of terrifying too.
That's a very contemporary cultural thing to think of how old am I going to be
when they're in their teenage
years? Or are they going to go to school and everyone thinks I'm their grandparents instead of their parents?
Or great-great-great-grandparents at that age.
Exactly. A lot of information there, though, in the story of Abraham and how God worked in his life, just the different things that they went through. The thing that stands out to me in his story is when you think about that period where they are trying to have children and they continue just to wait and wait and wait, yet they know all along that there's this promise that God's given them. And some of what they go through is the struggle of maybe trying to make that happen on their own without with bringing in his Hagar, his a part of his concubine, I guess. Is that what we call that?
I thought she was hers, wasn't she?
I don't remember.
I'd have to go back and check that. We probably should have had that and check
it.
We'll
fact check that, Kelsey, at the end of our show. We'll correct that for us.
She is typing it right now as we speak. So check on that.
But it's interesting just to see how God works through two people's lives over a long period of time. And when God does give us a promise that we believe in and we believe is going to come to fruition, sometimes we know in that experience there's going to be struggle.
Right.
And some of that struggle is just the sheer fact of time, that time passes. So day by day and month by month and year by year, nothing was happening to fulfill this promise.
Right. And it's a big promise. You're going to be the father of nations.
Right.
And you still haven't had one kid.
Yeah, nothing's moving in that direction.
Yeah. And that's definitely, to have the trust in God to fulfill that when you're looking at the number of the stars in the sky, sand on the sea, and you're saying, I still haven't had a kid.
Right.
Or my wife hasn't had a kid. How is God going to play? How old am I going to have to live?
Right. But we know that faith works out in a person's life and through a number of things. Part of it, that faith development, is just the journey itself, not the fulfillment necessarily of that promise, but just the struggle and the tension that we go through day by day and throughout our life. And then there comes that time where that promise is revealed. And then in Abraham's life, and the story that Casey will be speaking into this week for our conversation is... he has a son with Sarah, and they name him Isaac. And then after some years, God tells him to take Isaac, his only son, and to sacrifice him.
Sounds familiar in the New Testament.
How about that?
Yeah.
And so now you have this test of faith from a whole different perspective, that God has fulfilled his promise. And so what we'll be talking about, what Casey will lead us into, is this conversation of those three elements, God, Isaac, and Abraham, and how Abraham deals with that. And, you know, from when you read that story, the thing that you see is that he believed that God would provide. There's no way that he knew exactly how God was going to provide. But regardless of how God was provide, he had all the provisions to sacrifice his only son. And when he began to make that climb up that hill, that's what he was intending to do until God provided another way.
And I think a lot of times we forget about the faith of Isaac in probably his father and in God also, because at that age, he could have got away from Abraham.
Right.
He knew what was happening when he started getting tied up. He knew what was happening. He knew where it was going. That happened in that culture around them, in the other religions. So he knew what could be coming. He could have gotten out of it. Right.
And so there's a lot of parts sometimes we read over these stories, and this one is one that is over a long period of time. There's a lot in this story of Abraham to the time that Isaac was born, and we get to the sacrifice. sometimes we forget through the quick reading of a story and the capturing of the essence of a story, just the difficulty of that day-to-day activity in their life and the reality of those elements that were taking place, like you mentioned. So I think it's going to be a great conversation for us. It's one of those things where our theme has been developed around the two words all in, believing that in this case that in order for Abraham to demonstrate his faith to the next level, we might even use that,
nice.
that Abraham was going to prepare to sacrifice his only son just in the way that God had instructed him to, and through that going to my bad. Through that, God was going to make provision. And that's where faith really came through for him at this particular point in a whole different way.
There's a lot that goes into that text. It's going to be interesting to see how he narrows it down and brings it together.
Right. And the thing that what we're finding in this series is that for people who are listening to what we're saying through these messages and who are participating in some of the readings and so forth, God's beginning to speak to them about what all in looks like for them. Because I think that's what you struggle with sometimes, is that you're not trying to narrow something down so much that people leave believing that that's the only way that a person can lock in on something. But God speaks to each one of us, and it's really up to us to explore that and to see what God's saying to us, what God's promise, I think, would be a key thing for us this week as we're thinking ahead about this message. What's God's promise for us, and how can we demonstrate an all-in faith in regard to the promise that God has for us?
Yeah, because we already talked about like the idea of doubting. The longer it goes, sometimes we don't just doubt God, we doubt ourselves, that maybe we misunderstood what God had promised, or maybe we misunderstood what God was doing, or maybe we didn't hear God at all.
Right.
So it's not just that Abraham probably doubted God at some point or whatever happened there, but you doubt yourself, and that's easy to slip into.
Well, and those are long, hard conversations, whether you're sharing that with a spouse or you're just in that world yourself. But anyways, we're looking forward to that, looking forward to seeing Casey. Once we finish this series, the following week we begin a whole new series that will last for 4 weeks. It's called Radius. It's something I'm pretty excited about in talking to our camp pastor this summer, Russell Johnson. He is at Radius Church in Lexington, South Carolina. And he was telling me about kind of how their church had developed who they were. They were a church that the pastor there started, and the church, I believe, now is over 10 years old. But it's real interesting how he uses the image of radius throughout the DNA of their church. And for us, we typically do a series in the fall following our launch series, which that's what All In has been, helping us to kind of focus on our mission and what God's called us to here in Sweetwater and the surrounding area. So fits into Radius, and we'll be exploring that through 4 different passages, and we're looking forward to that time as well. So anyways, I appreciate you guys joining us. Tika, it's been fun today.
It's been fun.
And we've got a lot of things to do before we get ready for tonight at 6 p.m., but we hope that we trust this is going to be a good semester.
It's going to be good.
It sure started off real well. Thanks, folks, for joining us. We meet for worship at 10:30 on Sundays at 213 East 3rd. We'd love for you to join us. It's fun to get to do this and to speak into your life just a little bit, but we realize that the greatest community is when we can be together, so we'd hope that you'll join us sometime. Anyways, we look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
See you then.
I'll be there. I won't be there.
No, you won't be there.